Hello, this is Tim Treelaw, and I play the third Doctor Who for Big Finish Productions. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Larry, it's Fraser, and you use "They all say who is Doctor Who? Where is he from?
What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who. So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores the bound-up world of Doctor Who collecting and all kinds of Doctor Who merchandise. Sometimes we just talk about Doctor Who. Brought to you in part by Forbidden Planet and Bags Unlimited Incorporated. I am Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I have been collecting Doctor Who since 1981, or 43 years. That's a long time. And welcome to our 80th episode here, celebrating Doctor Who collecting and much more. I opened one of the first Doctor Who stores in Chicago that exclusively served the Doctor Who fans in 1984, and we called it Bundles from Britain. It was a lot of fun. We made quite a bit of money, and then I left it and kind of forgot about it, and it became something of a distant memory for me. Every once in a while, I'd find a catalog and be like, wow, those were good days. I wonder what happened to everybody. Well, anyway, fast forward, and I picked up a great book called Red, White, and Who, the story of Doctor Who in America. And lo and behold, I couldn't believe it. Bundles from Britain was on page 384. My little shop had made history. Very humbling, and very proud and honored to be mentioned in such a great book. And you can find a link to buy this great book on the front page of our website at drwhocollectors.com. We do not make any money off this book. This is not my book to sell, but we want every collector to have a copy. We are part of the Direction Point Doctor Who Podcast Network, and you can find more great podcasts at directionpoint.org. And if you happen to be listening and you want to start a podcast, or you are a Doctor Who podcaster, look no further. Just go to directionpoint.org and sign up today. There is no cost. All we want is a 30-second commercial for each of other podcasts. Very easy to do. I do it for all the other network podcasts, and so do they. That's what you hear on this program. Great way to reach other listeners. So there you go. Other podcasts on there include Time Streams, Police Box in a Junkyard, the Doctor Who Target Book Club, Traveling the Vortex, and many more, many, many more. So for more information on that, go to directionpoint.org. And speaking of links, two great resources that I always include in every episode, because you could start anywhere. You don't have to start at 1, you could start at 80, wherever you like to be. Timelash.com, a very important link. Write that one down or put it into your bookmarks. And then from there, go to the TARDIS Library. It's a complete, exhaustive collection of all the media, books and videotapes and CDs and all that stuff ever produced for Doctor Who. No magazines, sadly, but that's okay. You can also sign up for a free account and keep track of your collection and your want lists and even links to where you might be able to buy it. What a great deal. Our special thanks to Mr. Dan O'Malley, who keeps that site free. If you need to do more intense research, I'm talking about deep dives, look no further than Howe's Transcendental Toy Box. And of course, that's at doctorwhotoybox.co.uk. Free site to use. Of course, by Howe, we of course mean David J. Howe. Who else? The great collector himself out of the UK. Great friend, good resource, wonderful guy, head of Telos Publishing. Just a wonderful all-around fellow. I enjoy my talks with him, and they're frequent these days, so it's kind of nice. If you're looking for great Doctor Who items at really good prices, then look no further than going to DoctorWhoStore.com. It's in the name, of course. That's Alien Entertainment. They have what you need. They're always running sales and specials. And, of course, if you live in Chicago or the west suburbs, you can select free pickup from the store. What a great deal. Save that postage. And while you're at the store, browse that incredible selection of Doctor Who and other fantasy items that they carry in their stores. Oh, wow. The Lombard location is open Wednesday through Saturday. They're also now open in Logan Square. So for more information on that, visit their home site at alienentertainment.com, location and store hours. You can also find great Doctor Who items at Forbidden Planet, but you don't need to go anywhere. Just go to our website at drwhocollectors.com, click on merchandise links, and you can shop from the best at Forbidden Planet right there. You check out at Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet pays us a small commission for each of those sales, and that helps keep our show on the air. So thank you for supporting us there. We've already gotten our first check from them, so thank you once again. And, of course, don't forget we have an eBay store. I try to keep that up to date, although I'm going to be closing it for convention season because we take all of our stuff out to the conventions, and we don't want somebody to, buy something and then not get it, But it's open right now, so lots of Target books, some hardcovers, and other goodies listed. I went through the collection, and I started purging duplicates, triplicates, fourthlicates. Is that a word? Fourthlicate? I'll look it up. Anyway, that's what's going on there. All proceeds, of course, benefit the podcast. Finally, don't forget Who North America down in Canby, Indiana. Keith and Jenny, great folks. They opened their store for quite some time now. You can find them at whona.com. That's WHONA.com. And finally, of course, don't forget our good friends over across the pond at the Who Shop of London. I know they are listening to the program, so hello out there, Alex and the gang. It's always good to know you out there. You can find them at thewhoshop.com. Of course, on our website, in addition to all the podcasts posted, every podcast is on our website. And some providers cap it at 10 or 20, but all 80 episodes are for your perusal, your download, your reference. You can search by category, search by topic, whatever you need to find out. And I'm more than happy to help. Also, at our website, we have the complete guide to Doctor Who classic hardcover books. This has been quite a thing. And then there's been some recent magazines that have come out and even some really off-color books. And I mean that books that shouldn't have been published. They robbed all the artwork about these wonderful hardcovers that came out from W.H. Allen, Tandem Wingate, Publishing, and we cover those year by year on this program. And so it's really important to know more about those books and what exists and what doesn't, and what's a fake, what's real, and what they're really worth, and why should you not pay $1,800 for a copy. It's just crazy. But keep in touch. We'll have that ready to go there. So we list a lot of reprints that nobody even caught, including the Two Doctors having a reprint, which you'll find out more about on today's program. So what's going on? Anyway, we've got Chicago TARDIS 2024 all set for November 29 to December 1st. That's Thanksgiving weekend 2024. So join us for the 25th anniversary of Chicago TARDIS. And we have, basically, it's one of the best conventions in the Midwest. Guests have been announced, so here's what's on the list. We've got 3 doctors, Paul McGann, Sylvester McCoy, and Joe Martin in her first Chicago TARDIS appearance. 3 doctors. We've also, to match that, three Blake 7 actors, including Jan Chappelle, Brian Croucher, and Sally Nivette. So that would be fun to do. Also coming, our good friend, also celebrating a 25th anniversary, Jason Haig-Ellery, the CEO of Big Finish, or I like to call him the Big Cheese of Big Finish. I don't know if he gets that, but we'll see him there. Also coming over is our good friend Sadie Miller, who's been recently cast as Sarah Jane Smith in the new series. We'll see how that goes. I don't know if that's a rumor or if that's true, but she posted the news article, so we'll see how it goes. She's the daughter of Elizabeth Sladen, so you couldn't get any better than that. Also there will be Sonny McGann. That's Paul's son. He was on Big Finish. Also, all coming with your ticket, of course, is Fraser Hines, the man who sings our theme song. I'll try to catch up with him there. He just turned 80 not long ago. Great guy. And, of course, you also get Wendy Padbury this year, who usually comes with Fraser. You get Fraser with the side of Wendy. The second Doctor team Always wonderful. So there we go. What else is going on? Well, we've got Doctoberfest Infiltrate set for Saturday, October 19th, and it will be at Who North America. If it does happen to move to a hotel, we will update you. There's always changes that could be happening. And I was the first guest, so it was really nice to be asked, presenting my new panel for this year. And I'll announce that here. We're doing a living history of classic Doctor Who books from 64 to 96. Many of these books were never seen in the United States, and definitely not up close. So if you'd like to see, and even books that were printed in the United States and nobody knew they existed. I'm not kidding. Crazy stuff. But you can see these up close and personal there. I also have a dealer table at Doctoberfest, so check out my my collection of Target books for sale, some hardcovers, and some other goodies. They will help the podcast, of course. Other guests include my friend Keith Barnfather, the founder of Real Time Pictures. Great guy. We'll have Brandon Peters, another good friend of the Brandon Peters Show. We were on the Brandon Peters Show last year. Catherine Sullivan, an author. And, of course, we've got Nick Seidler, who's one of the authors of Red, White, and Who. And alongside him are other authors of Red, White, and Who, including Robert Warnock, John Lavallee, Libby Shea, and main author Stephen Warren Hill, who was on this program not too long ago. Also, we got Mark and Dina Dooley of the Hoosier Network, Nicholas Crone, writer, actor, and director. We'll also have D&D Balloon Twisters, and finally Kevin Lyons of with Custom Toys. That's a show. So see the link on my website for more information. There is no membership fee, but we ask that you please log on to whona.com and buy one of the many T-shirts. That's how they're funding the show this year. So please buy 1 or 20 T-shirts. That would be great. Of course, I talked about my website already, but there are many rumors floating around the internet about second and third printing hardcover books by Wingate or W.H. Allen, or even hardcover books by Virgin Publishing, which don't exist. By the way, I'm going to repeat that. They don't exist. Somebody argued with me that it was a genuine hardcover book, and I'm like, no, it's not. I have it from David J. Howe himself, who worked at Virgin Publishing. Those were fan creations. They take existing Virgin books and convert them into hardcover books. It's kind of sad. But anyway, if you have an actual second or third printing of a hardcover book, especially we're looking to see if any proof out there of a Loch Ness Monster second printing exists. The new theory is that the third printing that I have is actually a misprint and was supposed to be a second printing. But there's no evidence that a second printing exists out there. Not a single collector has one, and no one has come forward with one yet. Maybe you've got it. Check your shelves. You never know. I'd love to talk to you, too, if you want to be on the show, and you're a collector, cosplayer, Doctor Who actor, whatever it is that you do. Just give me an email at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you on the show. Who's coming up on the show? Well, very soon we will have Neil Cole, who has a book out called It Belongs in a Museum, and we'll talk about that, plus his Doctor Who prop museum and collection. Sounds like it's going to be a great time. On today's show, I'm continuing our coverage of the classic Doctor Who hardcovers, and this year we're covering 1985, and that's with me, of course, is Tony Whitt, who's going to help us out with the novels themselves, because I'm required to bring him on the show whenever I talk about novels. I want to take a moment to thank our patrons. If you want to see exclusive material, including our special video content, go to our Patreon page and subscribe at the $15 level. And you can find us at patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast altogether. Or you can just search for us there and you'll find us. You can also support us at our podcast provider. We are a Podbean podcast, and so just go to drwhocollectors.podbean.com, and you can become a patron there at any level you feel comfortable with. Thank you for your support. Our theme song is Who's Doctor Who, composed by Barry Mason and Les Reed, featuring the vocal talents of the great Fraser Hines. You can hear this podcast almost anywhere you get your podcasts, including Pandora, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean, and many more. We are, of course, a Direction Point Network podcast. After the break, we'll do My Time, of course, our main story on the hardcovers, and, of course, the most outrageous offer. Stay tuned.
Traveling the Vortex.
Are you ready to embark on an epic journey through time and space? Join the thousands of Whovians around the world who've discovered Traveling the Vortex, the ultimate Doctor Who podcast for die-hard fans and curious newcomers alike.
Every week, we dive deep into the Whoniverse, discussing the episodes, theories, and hidden gems. We dissect the Doctor's adventures, share behind-the-scenes stories, and explore the legacy of this iconic show.
Traveling the Vortex brings fans together, fostering a global community of Whovians. Whether you're a fan of classic or new Who, there's something for everyone.
Join us on this incredible journey as we unravel the mysteries of time and space.
Don't miss out. Subscribe to Traveling the Vortex today on your favorite podcast platform.
Traveling the Vortex. Your ticket to adventure awaits.
Traveling the Vortex is a proud member of the Direction Point Podcast Network. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Nathan.
Experience Doctor Who from the very beginning through a classic fan's eyes.
And through the eyes of a new Who fan.
Reminisce and relive those classic moments with Nathan as he offers fun insight.
Or experience them for the first time with Juliet as she dwells on social issues, history, fashion, and the size of a flashlight.
We're the Time Streams podcast.
Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
It's my time.
Hi, it's time for my time, and this is where I get to talk about whatever I want, because it's my show. Can't be more blunt than that. Anyway, today I'm excited because we got a couple of 25th anniversaries coming up, and I want to make sure that I talked about a lot of it in the introduction, but I'll go into more detail. But Big Finish is celebrating 25 years, and they did a big offer where they did a gold collector's edition of The Sirens of Time on cassette with CD and some other goodies with that. And of course, I was able to get in on that before it shut down due to being sold out. There's also a silver edition and there's a regular edition. So make sure you celebrate with that. Because if you remember on this podcast, we challenged Big Finish and Jason Haig-Ellery to put out another product on cassette, which we told them would sell. And Nicholas Briggs even said, I bet it would. So it actually did. So we're going to take full credit for that, even though we'll never get acknowledged. That's okay. Also celebrating the 25th anniversary this year is Chicago TARDIS. 25 years ago, my old partner and friend Gene Smith took over from the Visions conventions. I think he was on the board and working with them as well. But they had no convention in I think it was 2000 or 1999. I'm just working off my memory here. Somebody will correct me, and that's okay. But then he started Alien, the whole thing with Alien Entertainment and Chicago TARDIS, which had great guests. I mean, Elizabeth Sladen was there, John Pertwee. It was very early days. I of course had no idea that Chicago TARDIS was around. I was out of the Doctor Who world for quite some time. Focusing on my career, and I was collecting still. I didn't even know about I didn't even know Gene owned the store. It was kind of funny when I ran into him in 2016, and I was like, wow, it's still going on. That's just crazy. But yeah, it's a great thing. Come on out to Chicago and celebrate with us. We got a lot of people coming, a lot of my friends coming in from the UK and from New York and from other parts of the world to come see Chicago TARDIS. So it's a wonderful, wonderful convention. I'm going to be doing my panels there this year. So it's going to be, of course, a living history of Doctor Who books from 1964 to 1996. 9 boxes of books. That's just a sampling of the books that were published during that time. Of course, more books were published from 2005 to the present day. So I haven't even gone into that, but what an amazing thing. Plus, a lot of these books were never seen here in the United States. So it'd be kind of cool to see those up close and personal. What a great time. I don't really have any complaints today. It's been pretty good time, out there. I haven't seen too many crazy things. The outrageous offers are coming in. Thank you so much for sending those to me out there. I really enjoy looking those up and kind of going, really? Nothing has beat the $1 million calendar yet, but keep them coming. We really love that. So that's all I got to say today. So that's my time for the day. So after a quick break here, we're going to get right into our main story. It's going to be myself and Tony Whitt talking about the hardcovers of 1985. Stay tuned.
The vervoids are probably the best dirty joke in Doctor Who.
They're hermaphroditic plants.
A lot of plants are.
So there you go. It's based on science.
No, they'll ship anything.
There are probably 11 and handle shippers out there. You just have to drill a hole where his mouth is, and you're all set.
He needs the room. I've seen it in pictures.
I'm not saying you're not a fan. I'm saying you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Doctor Who gives a drunken Doctor Who podcast for the end times.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. Keep collecting.
Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy.
And now it's time for the main story on the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. This is a continuation of our coverage of the classic Doctor Who hardcovers that we have done over several episodes and now several years. We've covered 1974 and today through 1985 with the imprints of Universal Tandem, which were at the time Alan Wingate, Longbow, and W.H. Allen, amongst other titles. We start in 1985, where the W.H. Allen imprint is used exclusively. A much better year than the previous year, with 14 books being published, and one title getting a completely ceremonial and, without any explanation, a second printing. More on that later. It also will be the last time a hardcover book will be given a second impression. This is only compared to 9 Target books printed the same year. Also one with a ceremonial and nonsensical reprint. More on that later. Again, if you're joining us for the first time, here is the brief history. In 1975, a Universal Tandem, which was the father company, was sold by a company called UPD to the British conglomerate Howard and Wyndham. And the company was then renamed Tandem Publishing before they quickly merged with the paperback imprints of Howard and Wyndham's general publishing house, W.H. Allen, to become Wyndham Publications Limited in 1976. During the 77-78 year, the Wyndham identity was completely phased out, and the Tandem imprint was phased out during 1980. The surviving titles were backlisted to the principal paperback imprint, which is called Star Books. The Target imprint, which had been a book for children's books throughout the early 70s, survives until 1993. The later years, it was used exclusively for Doctor Who novelizations and offshoots. The Alan Wingate imprint was forever retired at the end of 77, and the W.H. Allen imprint is used until the run ends in the middle of June 1988. Of course, anytime I talk about Doctor Who novels on this particular program, I was compelled by the Keller machine to include our resident Doctor Who specialist and guru of Target novels, the host and producer of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, Direction Point Network podcast, my friend Tony Whitt. Welcome back, Tony.
Damn that Keller machine. It does get around, doesn't it?
I know. I still remember when I was 6 years old building one out of Legos because I had just seen The Mind of Evil. And we were, of course, nightmares galore about that thing because, just at, that's a young age to see that thing. And of course, I keep rewatching it and I go, it's a good story too. It's just really gets you. But anyway, I just to say, talking about this year here, publication of 14 hardcover books, much better. The run will be coming to an end in under 3 years' time from this time here. The last hardcover reprint is done this year, and I'll tell you why that is, because it's bizarre and crazy and probably caused a big rift between two entities. And of course, you won't even notice the difference because they did nothing to draw attention to it. These hardcovers are extremely sought after, and I bring that to an exclamation point, and I'm glad I have you on the program for this, Tony. But as many of you know, when we covered 1976, I talked about the Loch Ness Monster, the first edition. It had a blue spine and a dust jacket, and it's a copy I don't have, and I've been looking for it for 40 years. But here you go, Tony. The last copy that sold for $1,000.
Oh my.
The bidding just kept getting higher and higher, and I think it ended at 994 pounds, which puts it at just over a little over $1,000.
Oh,
and I thought to myself, that's not too far under my mortgage payment. It's not. It's like, I can't believe it. And of course, eBay changed its algorithm so you can't see who the winner was. So I was like, I was always wondering if I could find the winner and go, why? Because that kind of changes the dynamic of those books. And I'm going, it's just a book. But
Right.
I'm not going to spend my life savings on a copy. But I just thought that's just crazy. But these are extremely sought after. This year is a little bit more expensive than last year, but not too much for a good reason. The books, of course, can be found in two different ways here. They can be in ex-library condition, which is either pulled from a library or stolen from a library, which has happened over the years, or what we call a non-library edition, which is either a retail store version or publisher sold version or a publisher review copy. And 11 of these titles were distributed in the USA for the very first time this year. More on that later. So before I go further here, Tony, any prominent memories of 1985?
1985 was the year that my family moved back to Michigan from Virginia.
Okay.
Which means it was also the first year that I had no access to Doctor Who at all.
Oh, my.
Yeah, because we did not have a VHS or a VCR until, I think, the next year.
Okay.
So I didn't have any tapes of Doctor Who to watch. And even though it had been on public television, on Channel 9, and the local PBS station, and had actually been on another channel every night of the week, and that was a commercial channel, which was bizarre. So I had just a wealth of Doctor Who in Virginia. At the time, there was no station that I could tune into that had it in 1985.
Oh,
And it wasn't until the following year, I believe, that we finally got a PBS station nearby that started running it. And the surprise there was they came to the end of whatever run we had then. I think it was the Davison episodes. The very next episode was An Unearthly Child.
Wow. Okay, so that would have probably been about the time that Lionheart released all the black and white episodes in a big package, which I think I've got covered in the history here, but that sounds about right. Yeah, that's something. I depending on what part of Michigan you were in, my grandparents lived in Ironwood, which was in the Upper Peninsula, and the only station they could get in, and on a good day when the antenna was facing a certain direction, was a station in Duluth. And it was very snowy, but I remember watching a Doctor Who episode up there in very snowy conditions, and it was a Davison episode we hadn't gotten in Chicago yet. So it was, and they showed them episodic up there. So it caught like part 2 of Kinda or something like that, or whatever it was. But yeah, very interesting there. Of course, in Chicago, just everybody remembers 85. I would have been in the middle of my high school years. The Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl that year, and also produced a music video of a song that actually made the top 10 because everybody had to buy it to see it to believe it.
Oh, yeah.
And
I remember that too.
But of course, the great Walter Payton was a running back that year. It was just a great year for the city. Really enjoyed having the bear helmets on the lions at the museum for a change. But that was about it for 85. But here's what's happened in 1985 in the Doctor Who world. So in 1985, there was a documentary called Doctor Who Who's Who was screening at the NJN, and I couldn't figure out what that meant. It was some kind of film festival. In January, the Time Meddler and the War Machines were found in Nigeria. and quickly returned to the BBC. I remember the year before, I had seen a pirated copy of the part 2 of War Machines. That was the only thing that existed. And apparently that copy wasn't very good, but when they put it all together, I remember part 2 being slightly less than the other 3. So the one they already had must have been better than the one they found in Nigeria. So, but it was nice to get the Time Meddler back. That was kind of neat. 8 episodes. And of course they included those episodes in the US syndication package as quickly as possible.
Yes.
So the sale to the US of the entire backlog of all the older serials reported to earn the BBC £4.5 million. So in late March, a marathon of new Pertwee stories airs in Wisconsin. In May, 146 stations had purchased the series, exposing 70% of the population of the U.S. to the series. Similar reports were reported in the Wall Street Journal and Screen International magazine, and they state 144 markets. In July, BBC Enterprises in Lionheart staged a 3-day television sales event at Cable Beach in Nassau in the Bahamas. If you're going to have a conference, do it in the Bahamas because you can write the whole thing off.
Right.
So they flew all the program buyers out to the Bahamas and sold Doctor Who with a total package worth £250,000. So I guess it was worth it. In August, USA Today published a 2-page article on Doctor Who. An 11-minute promotional video was produced by Lionheart as an electronic press kit to sell the series. Some stations aired it as a behind-the-scenes feature, sometimes during pledge drives. And I remember seeing this. So I don't think it's on YouTube anymore, but somebody had it for a while. The video contains clips from the forthcoming package of Hartnell, and Troughton episodes, but no clips from season 22, which had only just aired in the UK. It was reported in Doctor Who Bulletin, issue 43, that the Hartnell to Troughton regeneration sequence from 10th Planet was edited to the end of the War Machines. I never saw that, and there's no evidence to exist. There's no current evidence to suggest that it can be proven. So, and they also put it at the start of the Dominators. So we don't know if that was a single TV station that did it, but there was a report that somewhere it happened, but there's no video evidence to show that it happened. Some stations played a slideshow with voiceover introduction over each episode to explain the black and white episodes a little bit better because, we're maybe not that smart. I don't know. In October, New Jersey was the first to screen the season 22 Colin Baker stories. They aired on NJN. I guess that must be the station in New Jersey. Oh, that makes sense. New Jersey N. Okay. Mixed in with a run of Hartnells and Troughtons. Other stations screen the stories from November, but most stations don't air them until the new year. Some stations that purchased the Hartnell, Troughton, Pertwee, and Colin Baker as a package deal preferred to schedule the new stories first, followed by the other 3 Doctors in order. This was not the case in Chicago. We had to sit through all of the Hartnell, Troughtons, which were fine, but then the Pertwee, Baker, and Davison eras again. so it took a year and a half to get to the Colin Baker stories. This was a big year for conventions, 61 conventions in 1985. I don't think there are 10 conventions now. No. 61. The most notable convention was TARDIS 22. And this was on Thanksgiving weekend in Chicago at the Hyatt Regency downtown hotel. This is the program that I got from that. For my viewers out there, this is the program, which had a lot of guests. Here is everybody that attended that. It was Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee, Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant, Janet Fielding, Louise Jameson, Elizabeth Sladen, Mark Strickson, Sarah Sutton, Terry Walsh, Lalla Ward, John Nathan Turner, John Levine, Richard Franklin, Anthony Ainley, Paul Darrow, and Jacqueline Pierce. So it was quite a show. I remember meeting Anthony Ainley at this one. I had a long conversation with Elizabeth Sladen. She was pregnant at the time, so that would have been Sadie. So very, very cool there. And met Colin Baker for the first time. It would be the final Spirit of Light convention, as TARDIS 23 was planned, booked, and quickly canceled because the head of Spirit of Light was under federal investigation for tax evasion.
Yes.
And apparently he left the country. I believe he's back now. He might be on social media because Red, White, and Who did get in touch with him for their interview for the book, but I don't know.
I did buy several things directly from Mr. Rubenstein at the time, and I do remember at the time discovering how conventions could be run and how they could be run better. And that's a pretty good blueprint for how Chicago TARDIS is run today. The company I started in '84, Bundles from Britain, became the sole distributor for these hardcover novels after Lyle Stewart basically dumped them all on us. They said that no one wanted them. No bookstore would keep them. Many were returned to them after having no sales. They weren't sure if it was the high price or the fact that no one saw them or they weren't displayed properly. But after they offered them to us, we took the entire lot and sold most of them out at TARDIS 22. So that was amazing. They said they would not be importing any more hardcover books, except they make a small exception in 1988. And we'll get to that in a couple of years. So let's go to the books. In 1985, of course, all Doctor Who hardcovers will be W.H. Allen and printed with a laminated cover. All will feature the neon or the Sutton designed logo in various colors. 11 of the books were distributed and sold by Bundles from Britain in the United States. And some of the copies I have are still from that inventory. And some of the copies are still available for sale at any Alien Entertainment from the original inventory, if you can believe it. That's how many there were. So we start in January 17, 1985, with Doctor Who and the Abominable, I can't always say abominable, the Abominable Snowmen by Terrence Dix. The cover, of course, by Andrew Skilleter. About 3,000 copies were printed, and the book had a price of £5.95. And it would be approximately $23.43 today. The U.S. price was $12 on this book. The paperback of this version was first issued in 1974. It was not known why a hardcover edition was not done sooner. The audiobook was issued in 2009 with David Troughton providing the narration. This book is very hard to find because this was, for some reason, it was part of the U.S. distribution, but I don't remember a lot of copies in hand for this one. So you could pay about $130 or more for this in either non-library or library condition. And my copy, of course, is from the original inventory and is still in mint condition. So, wow, this is a long time ago for you, but Tony, how did the club like this book?
This was episode 37, and we actually quite liked it. Even Allison did, and she almost doesn't like anything.
True.
Dalton gave it a 3.5. Allison gave it a 2.5, but said it was a... how did she put it? She said that it was a 2.5 that had been pulled out of her, so she rather liked it. And I found myself shocked and amazed at how good it was, because I told them that I'd suffered through the audio version and didn't much care for it. And yet I gave the novelization a 4, because it actually is Terrence Dix at the top of his game.
That's great. Yeah, I know and of course it was written in 74. So it was a fresh Terrence Dix.
Yeah.
Not the later 80s version.
Not the stale version we got later.
Because I think he got tired of writing after a while. But,
oh yes.
But yeah, it was a good book. I read it a long time ago, and I was very happy to see the hardcover come out. All right, we move on to the second on the same month. Also on January 17, they did a twofer that month. We get Doctor Who and the Crusaders, and of course you'll notice that this cover says "and the Crusaders." I'm going to quickly slip this dust jacket off. They said that on the book as well, even though the "and the" was deleted a few while ago. So this is a leftover from the original book. The title, of course, this is by David Whittaker. And this is the first title to be published by W.H. Allen as far as the Crusaders go. We've had, essentially, the third printing in hardcover. In 1966, Muller published their version. In 1975, you get the White Lion edition with Tom Baker on the cover, go figure. And again in 1985. So apparently roughly every 10 years, you get a Crusaders. So I'm not sure why. The cover art is by Andrew Skilleter. And the reason why there's a dust jacket is Andrew Skilleter made these limited edition dust jackets. There's no change in the artwork, but I think it looks a little bit clearer, that were on his website. They are out of print, but they're all signed by him. I know his signature is in here somewhere. Yep. And it's a really cool thing. The copy, about 3,000 copies. So the cover art is still for sale at andrewskilleter.com. And I have it's now out of print, unfortunately. But this book is also very hard to find. This was, for some reason, was not included in the U.S. distribution, so I had to get this through other means. I'm not sure why. Either that Dial Stewart didn't get it, or it was never sent over. So you can actually pay about $375 or more for this book. It's really quite hard to find. This also goes way back for you, Tony. So what was the verdict on this one?
That was episode 14, and for that one, we didn't have Allison on. She has yet to have read this book.
Ah.
Jenny Ingersoll was on the program for that one.
Sure, yes.
And Dalton gave it a 4, Jenny gave it a 3.5, and I'm not quite sure why. Because Dalton and I both loved it. I gave it a 4.5, mainly because David Whitaker's best book, in my opinion, is Doctor Who and the Daleks.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
This one comes in a tight second.
And it would be his second book for Doctor Who, because when they printed the Muller books, they did the Daleks first, then they did the Zarbi, but they went back to him for the Crusaders.
Exactly.
So it was those are the 3 books that came out in the 60s. So those were the ones that were, that I think set the gold standard for, which many target authors fail to reach.
Right, exactly.
And like I'm saying that, we're going to the next one here. So if you were not busy on Valentine's Day 1985, February 14th, and you showed up to your date's house with a copy of The Awakening, you might have had the door slammed in your face. This is by Eric Pringle with a cover by Andrew Skilleter. More than 3,000 copies were made, and so many of these were in our inventory that Alien Entertainment still has some. So 39 years later, they still have new copies. The paperback edition, interesting enough, has no table of contents, but the hardcover does. Not sure why. There was an audiobook in 2010 read by Neris Hughes, who was in Kinda. Not sure why they chose her, but that's what they did. Very easy to find. This book will cost you under $45. I've seen it. That's the highest I've seen it for. I've seen it as low as $12 even today, because it's just not a very desirable book. Unless you're going for the complete run of hardcovers, there's no reason to buy this. I still have the original Lyle Stewart price tag on the bottom of $12 from 1985. I did hear this story, this episode not too long ago. So tell us about this one, Tony.
That was episode 147, and we had Jim Sangster on for that one because this is one of his favorite stories.
Oh, wow.
God only knows why.
I know.
It's one of his favorite stories.
Everybody has a favorite, so.
Yeah. And he and Allison both liked it and gave it 3s, whereas Dalton and myself didn't like it quite so much and gave it a 2.5 because you'd have to listen to the episode. Jim has some interesting news about that particular book. So if you think it's got flaws, there's a very good reason why it has those flaws, and we went into some detail about that on the episode.
Okay, and I do recommend you can go to SoundCloud and look up the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast and find that episode. Or do a search in Google. It'll actually come right up, because that's what I do when I want to find a old episode of the Target Book Club. So absolutely. And I only have it because it's in the collection. I've had it since 1985, but we took one of each book. So it was, here we go. We go on to March 21st, 1985 with our first, when I brought in the Keller machine here, we have The Mind of Evil by Terrence Dix, cover by Andrew Skilleter, which is considered to be one of the best renditions of Roger Delgado. It's been a long day. Roger Delgado ever drawn, and I agree. This is a wonderful cover. 3,000 copies were printed, and this title was sold in the United States. You can still get copies from Alien Entertainment. Prints of the cover are available from Andrew Skilleter, and there's no information why the book waited from the 70s to take this long to come out. The story was first seen in TV in 1975 in full color, and an audiobook in 2017 was read by the late Richard Franklin. In March of '89, it was reprinted by Star Books and combined with The Claws of Axos. So this book is definitely not too hard to find, and I think Alien has it for $75, or you can find it for less in mint condition. And this copy is from 1985. There's not a mark in it. So what about The Mind of Evil, Tony?
You were actually on the program for that one.
Was.
In episode 55.
It was a long time ago.
Yes, it was. You gave it a 4.5, and Dalton gave it a 3.75. Allison gave it a 2.5. I gave it a 3.5. It actually is a decent book, and I suspect it's because even though it's later Terrence Dicks, it is specifically about a story that he script edited.
Right. And I do remember, I don't remember exactly what I said on the program. I'll have to go back and re-listen, but I do remember reading the book. And of course I've watched the serial many times. I've seen it in color and black and white and then color again. But it's a very good story for me because I thought the enemy was almost unseen until the end of the first episode. And you still didn't know what was going on for quite some time, and then the master had a completely different side plot, and it was just a really good 6-parter. And of course, they got to film it at a beautiful location too. I don't know if you follow Doctor Who locations guides, the guy that has the YouTube channel. I don't know if you've seen those. He goes to all these places. He writes letters to people who own the property, and 9 times out of 10 they say, "Sure, come on in and film." And you get to see Stangmore Prison at some castle out there, and he had all the locations mapped out, and it was very cool. So that's Mind of Evil. Mind of Evil, by the way, in 1985 sold for $12. That's the price tag on the back with Lyle Stewart on it. And like I said, go to DoctorWhoStore.com and you can get a copy yourself. Let's go to June here. So June 13th, we get a rare occurrence here. Excuse me, I skipped over May. Let me go back to May here. Actually, let me go back to April. It's been a long day. April 11th, 1985. We get The Myth Makers by Donald Cotton and a cover by Andrew Skilleter. This book was sold in the United States, and it sold very well because nobody had seen it. And I don't believe it exists. So 3,000 or more were printed, and it's still available at Alien Entertainment. This is the first of the Donald Cotton books after 20 years after its broadcast. Andrew Skilleter actually used the model of the Trojan horse, which is owned by David J. Howe. And he told me that story where he met the guy who did the set for The Myth Makers, and he said, "Hey, you want the Trojan horse? It's been sitting in my garage forever." And so he said, "Yeah." So that's
amazing.
So in his museum, he's got the actual Trojan horse model that they used for the Myth Makers. So that this is an accurate rendition of it. So that's pretty cool. The paperback of this book had the highest print run ever, 65,000 copies. And there's no explanation for that. It's just really wild. Also, they decided with this copy to do a little bit of a sneaky price increase to £6.95. So that could be why they had so many copies to send to the United States, because everyone was like, "What? £6.25? I'm not paying that." I don't know what that was back then, but that's probably pricey. It's also not the final price increase of the year. They decided to get greedy later too. So a lot of copies were dumped to the United States. In 2008, there was an audiobook read by the great Stephen Thorne, who, if you haven't remembered him, he was Azal, Omega, and Eldrad, amongst other voices. So not hard to find. This book can be had for about $65 or slightly less in new condition. And this copy is from 1985, still with the Lyle Stewart sticker on there. And this goes back in time for you as well, Tony. So what did you guys think of The Myth Makers?
It does. That goes all the way back to episode 19. And that's when our love affair with Donald Cotton began, because we adore his books on the podcast. And this one we all loved because Dalton gave it a 4.5. Allison gave it a 4, which she said was her highest score to date, and I think to this day it is still her highest score.
Wow.
And I gave it a 4.75, and the only reason it doesn't get a 5 is because there's another one of his books that gets a perfect 5. This one comes really, really close. As I said on the podcast, I adore this book. This is one of the few Doctor Who books that I'll go back and reread just for the enjoyment of it.
That's on my list to read this year, because I have a few extra Target copies, because when I buy Target books, I don't buy one title. I usually say, "Oh, you got 200 for sale? What do you want for it?" And I go through them, and if I just reach over here, I can just say I've got stacks of these things, literally. So when you do your little thing at the beginning of the podcast saying you have so many, I always think I do have so many. I really do need a place to put them.
Yes, you do.
Crazy. All right, we go to May 16th, 1985, and this is an interesting story about this particular book because this book has been mistaken for another book, which is why it gets such a high price these days. So we have The Invasion by Ian Marter coming out in May 16th with a cover by Andrew Skilleter, which actually is the first time they showed a accurate Cyberman on the cover, because the previous The Cybermen and Tomb of the Cybermen were both wrong Cybermen. The book was sold, let's see, it looks like sold in the U.S., probably had more than 3,000 copies. Derek Sherwin was supposed to write the book, but it was passed on to Ian Marter, who, by the way, hated writing for Cybermen. And by the way, the Russian character Nick Courtney is actually Nicholas Courtney. So pretty interesting. This is also the word bastard appears in this book, so it had a little bit of a warning. So the first book to have the correct Cybermen. The cover art is still available for Andrew Skilleter, and the book is pretty hard to find, and let me explain why. It looks a lot like The Wheel in Space. And there was a rumor, and now it's been proven to be false, that there was a warehouse fire and that many copies of the paperback and hardcover were destroyed. And many people put their heads together. Many notable Doctor Who collectors kind of said, wait a minute, we never heard of such a thing. David Howe says it's a load of bunk. And that The Wheel in Space had like almost 30,000 paperbacks done. So there's definitely no reason that it should be sold. So The Invasion has been going for at least 500 or more. And I think it's because they confuse it with The Wheel in Space. The Invasion had we had like hundreds of copies here in the United States, so they're floating around somewhere. So I don't know why that's the case. This is my copy from 1985, so I don't think it's worth $500.
No,
I certainly think it's worth a lot less than that. My copy was sold for $12. There might be more out there. Maybe people are holding on to it, but that's one of the reasons why this book, and it's got the same black cover with Cybermen on the front cover and the same, I believe it's the same logo. It might even be the McCoy logo, but that one gets, and of course now the last price I saw on a Target copy of Wheel in Space was like $50. And I said to the guy, you really want $50 for this? Well, that's what it's selling for. I said, well, maybe, but it shouldn't sell for that. But whatever. Anyway, what did you guys think of The Invasion?
That was episode 45, and I know I just said it's not worth $500, but it is worth it in terms of just the book itself.
Okay.
It's not worth $500, but it's definitely worth it quite a bit. Dalton gave it a 4, Allison gave it a 3, which is fairly high for her, and I gave it a 3.5. It is not the best Ian Marter that we've read, obviously, but it is good. And we enjoy Ian Marter from the 80s, and this is one of his better works, even though you're right, he hates doing Cybermen. I think he was tapped possibly to do Revenge of the Cybermen, and he said, nope, not going to do it.
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so he does a very good job with it.
Well, that's good to hear. I have not read the book. I remember seeing the first pirated copy of The Invasion I found came with an audio cassette of the 2 missing episodes. So we were able to listen to episode 1, and I think 1 and 3 are missing, and then 4, 5, and 6 are all there. I couldn't remember to be sure, but I think it's been animated since then. Yes. But it was a very good story to watch as far as being a major unit story, kind of setting up the Third Doctor, even though I don't know if that was on their mind already. But that was certainly a very good story to watch, and Patrick Troughton was brilliant in it, and I thought it was there were great characters. You got John Levine in there for the first time. You've got Nicholas Courtney and of course the guy, Tobias Vaughn and all that. It's just some great stuff. So yeah, I do recommend, if you can find a copy for under $500, snatch it up. That's going to be a hard one to find. Now, here's another rare occurrence, because on June 13th, I don't know if this was planned or just the way it came out, but we get a consecutive story.
All my travellings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil,
against
cover by
power-mad
3,000
conspirators. Copies were printed,
I
and
should
this
have
book was sold
stayed
in the
here.
United States. It was actually the
The
very
oldest
first
civilization.
Carlton story that was shown at
Decadent,
Artist 22
degenerate,
on the
and
big
rotten
screen.
to the core.
So we got to watch the
Conspirators,
Protons, and
Daleks,
then
Tyrants,
at the very end of that
Cybermen.
screening,
They're
Patrick
still in the
Troughton came
nursery
out
compared to
do a
us.
Q&A.
10 million
Very,
years of
very
absolute
good.
power. That's what it takes to be
One of my
really
favorite
corrupt.
stories, and actually the inspiration for my Doctor Who podcast network, Direction Point. So that's where that comes from. The paperback would not come out until November. And there's nothing really interesting about this. It just came out that year. You can find it for about $50, which is pretty good. A lot of them were out there, and that's what exactly you should pay. So what did you guys think of the Crotons?
That would have been episode 46, which obviously was consecutive for us.
Right
as
after the
well.
invasion, right? Yeah.
Right. Dalton gave it a 3. Allison gave it a 2.75, which is rather high for her, and I gave it a 3. And looking back on the Crotons of all things, I can't remember why we liked it so much. Because that's just it. When you get scores in the 3s, that generally means it was a decent novelization, nothing to write home about.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have a lowering of scores either, and the fact that Allison's score is so high means that she wasn't willing to give it a 2.5, but she also wasn't willing to give it a 3. So there must have been something to like about that one.
Oh yeah. And I like the story. I think it's a good Doctor Who story where the Doctor lands somewhere and finds something wrong and fixes it. So it's and the Crotons, of course, did come back in an audio story with Colin Baker. So they did something with that, and I thought it was an interesting enemy as far as a very very interesting idea, and the old Dynatrope. But I also know they're blind as a bat outside the ship, so. I don't know where I'm at. I need my GPS. Hello, I can't see. Somebody got in front of me. All right. On July 11th, we get The Gunfighters by Donald Cotton with another incredible cover by Andrew Skilleter. I have to say that because he listens. We love you, Andrew. We do. He's a good guy. Many more than 3,000 copies were probably produced. This was part of the U.S. distribution, and all 4 episodes did exist at that point. It is in the bundles catalog. Sold well because the episode hadn't been shown yet in Chicago. So also, this is the second book of this year that uses the word bastard. Must have caught on. This book was brought forward in the production schedule. And this is where we kind of get into what I talked about earlier about these mysterious reprints. The book was brought forward at the behest of John Nathan Turner because he wanted to ensure that the 2 Doctors would be the 100th Target book.
Right.
Otherwise, this would have been the 100th Target book. So the hardcover followed suit. So it was not long after this that W.H. Allen had a policy of ignoring John Nathan Turner and stopped sending him free copies of the books. I have one book in my collection that belonged to John Nathan Turner. It's my copy of The Sea Devils. It comes with an accompanying letter by the person who looked after his estate. And there are many things, including I recently talked to a guy who owns the figurines from the 5 Doctors that they used in the Time Scoop room. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were all hand carved and painted and all that. And I said, wow, I wish those would come up for sale. And he's like, nope, they're in my collection. So
Right.
They belong to John Nathan Turner. He took them as soon as the thing was over. So basically, the photo of William Hartnell that Andrew used is from An Unearthly Child. So it's a little earlier. Mm-hmm. And this is one of Andrew's 5 favorite covers when he was asked in a Doctor Who magazine interview. And the other thing I also happen to have that I got, I know you knew about this already, Tony, but I have a proof copy of The Gunfighters, signed by Donald Cotton, and it's a both pages. It's for the Target novel. It even has some errors and some correcting marks and things in there. It's really quite cool. Avocet was the typeset company that worked for W.H. Allen, so this is what it would come with. Now I was told it would have been bound, so somebody cut off the spiral bound, but it's still a pretty good find. And actually, long story short about this is that I bought it from a guy who refused to ship it to the United States. So I said, huh. So I got in touch with David J. Howe. I said, hey, I'm more than happy to pay you to send it. And he goes, I've got a better idea. I'm going to send it with Fraser Hines. So at the next convention, next Chicago TARDIS, Fraser comes up to me and says, I have the package. So I met him in the restaurant and he goes, open this darn thing. I want to see what you got. Because I didn't bother with it. I said, so I showed it to him. He goes, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, the guy wouldn't ship it to me. He goes, well, you just saved a ton in postage. I just threw it in my bag. I said, it's not breakable. It's paper. So, but I thought that was a pretty neat thing to get a hold of. I have no idea what it's actually worth. I didn't pay a lot for it, but I thought that was pretty cool. This book is actually worth only about $45 in new condition, and Alien Entertainment still has copies. So did the podcast love this book?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
It was episode 24, and Dalton gave it a 4. Allison, for some reason, gave it a 1.5. She said it was bargain basement cotton.
Ooh.
That's her exact phrase.
I can hear her saying that, actually.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure why she disliked it as much as she did. I, on the other hand, gave it a perfect 5. Because this I consider to be one of the absolute best Doctor Who novelizations. It also happens to be one of the best audiobooks. Because along with the 5 Doctors, which we get John Coleshaw doing every single Doctor in that one,
yes,
we get Shane Rimmer, who is in the original story, doing his best gunfighter's accent, which is better than the accents we got on screen.
Yes, much better.
And it's amazing. The entire thing is done in dialect. And it's just such a fun time. So if you've never heard the audio of this, by all means, go out and find it, because it is...
I have to check my audio file, see if I have this one. If not, I'll have to find it, because I love listening to the good ones. And so that's a good recommendation. I just remember watching episode 4 of the Celestial Toyman when he bites into the candy and needs a dentist. And the only dentist in town is Doc Conway. So that's a great setup for those Hardcovers episodes where they used to flow into each other like that. Very cool. All right, now we get to the controversy here.
A Doctor Who Podcast Network.
We get The Two Doctors by Robert Holmes with a cover by Andrew Skilleter. We have on record that maybe 6,000 or more of these were printed. The very first Colin Baker story to be novelized. This was entirely orchestrated by John Nathan Turner to become the 100th Target publication in paperback. Though it's not the 100th hardcover.
No.
That would be Arc of Infinity. Sorry. Oh, well. Wah, wah. Anyway, there was actually a moratorium. Now, this is interesting because we just showed you the gunfighters, and there's a picture of William Hartnell on the cover. Well, the reason they got away with that is that William Hartnell was dead by this point, and that they didn't have to pay anybody. However, they did not want to put doctor covers on the cover of this. The original idea was he wanted Troughton and Colin to be on the cover, and they said, well, we can't do that. It would make the book too expensive. So he uses 2 TARDISes with a Sontaran in there to kind of coming out of each other to show that thing, which is actually very brilliant. I thought it was very nice. Mm-hmm. It's one of the top 5 covers that he mentioned in that same Doctor Who magazine interview, and prints of this cover. And I might get a print of this because it's really nice. He has those on his website, and that's andrewskilleter.com. I wish I got paid for mentioning that, but I don't. The book has a price increase too. This book was put up to £6.95, 6,000 copies. They did sell. People wanted this. They promoted the heck out of it. And it goes back down to the regular price for the next book. So they didn't keep it. They could have been greedy, but they didn't do it. We don't know. The end papers in this book, I'm going to open this up here, are blue instead of white for some reason. The paperback, it's white, of course. So that was something that was unusual about this. Now, this actually, because of all this manipulation, this is rumored to be the final straw with W.H. Allen and John Nathan Turner. And they sent him a copy of The Two Doctors, and that was the last book that he received from them. He was not going to get any more. If he wants a book, he can go to the bookstore and buy it. So that was, I think there was a huge upset at W.H. Allen. They said, he's dictating our publication schedule. We can't allow that. Even though, looking back on it, these books cost a fortune, W.H. Allen. They were not making money on these at all. But I do want to point out real quick here, the paperback copy, and it does say first edition on there. So they have that in a little bubble there in the corner. And at the behest of John Nathan Turner, hey, you need to do a second edition. So they did. And this one says second edition. They also did it to the hardcover. But look at this. Oh, it's backwards. Try that again. There is no difference between these two books. They're exactly the same in every way, except on the copyright page, and I'll hold it up. Second impression. Mm-hmm. We may have had these in our stack and would never have known it because they were all mixed together. Still £6.95. We don't know if any of these got sent over with the batch that we got for. Did we get those? Yep, they were all shipped. So we don't know. I know it's interesting too. I want to also point out the first edition of the paperback was not available in the UK. They shipped all of these to the United States, all 28,000 of them, or something like that. So they had to buy them from us to get a first edition over there. Second editions were released to the UK. So there was a lot of manipulation here, and a lot of collectors. In fact, somebody pointed out to me, "Hey, your Two Doctors, is it a first or a second?" I said, "What are you talking about?" I only knew about the last one was supposed to be the Space War back in 1978 or something like that, but there was two editions. So I'm like, this is crazy. There's nothing different about the book. They didn't put any markers on the front, so if you're looking at this, you wouldn't know unless you opened it up. Crazy. But the copies, it's the last hardcover book to get a reprint or a second impression. There will be no more. And you can only identify it on the copyright page. So I may have had them in the shop, like I said, and didn't know it. I have both printings, obviously. Books are getting harder to find now. So, by the way, you do have to ask the seller, if he doesn't put the copyright page up, what printing are they selling? And I had contacted a couple sellers and I said, what printing do you have? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, check the copyright page. He's like, oh, blimey, it's a second edition. So he lowered the price. I don't know if the seller, I don't know if that means anything. I mean, I don't know I think they came out at the exact same time. So it's bizarre. It's just a bizarre set of things. So they discovered whether they had that. And by the way, they cost about $100 for either edition. And you can, collectors might want both of them. You might not care and just want one. There's really no physical difference of the books. So this is not too far back for you. On this one, I remember listening to this. So what was The Two Doctors like for you guys?
Yeah, that was episode 158, which is only last month, I believe.
Yeah.
And Dalton gave it a 4. Allison gave it a 3. I gave it a 4. All of us for the same reason, because it is the only novelization written by Robert Holmes.
Yes.
And thereby, even if it were not the 100th Doctor Who novelization, it is special in so many ways, not least of which that it manages to rehabilitate what was actually kind of a controversial and kind of awful in some ways story.
Yeah.
Apart from being a multi-Doctor story, there are problems with the story. If you read the book, it is much improved, even down to the tone of certain scenes, which listeners will know exactly what I'm talking about.
That's good to know. I also wanted to point out, I didn't point out further, but that the hardcover also says that it's the 100th Doctor Who book, and that's not true. for the hardcovers. They just reprinted the Target cover exactly the way it was without the Target logo in the corner. So that's that. But yeah, definitely listen to the Target book episode. I remember listening to that not long ago. So what an incredible thing. So next we go to November. I'm sorry, we go to September 12th, 1985, which is the day we're recording this. It's September 12th. So on this day, we got The Time Monster by Terrence Dix, cover by Andrew Skilleter, who dominates the year. 3,000 copies were printed, was part of the U.S. distribution. Prints of the cover are available from Andrew. For absolutely no reason, this book was put back to the £6.25 price tag. So the £6.95 was just a quick cash grab on the two doctors, and back to business as usual. In addition, these may have already been printed at that price, so they didn't want to put stickers over it because they always say that's a pain to do. So there's not much really on the big story behind this book, although this book is from the original inventory that I had in 1985. You can get it for about $50. It's not real expensive and not hard to find. I found about 10 copies for sale recently, so you can find one. What about this one, Tony? This is a little further back.
Yeah, this is episode 63, and Dalton gave it a 2.75, which probably means he wanted to give it higher, but just wasn't all that interested in it. Allison gave it a 2. I gave it a 2.5, mainly because it's not one of my favorite stories. As a matter of fact, I'll do a very brief plug for my other project, which is my YouTube channel, which is That 70s Review. And that can be found at youtube.com/Emperor Dalek. And I just did an episode on the Pertwee era, and I usually split it up into 3 must-see episodes and 3 must-avoid episodes. Time Monster is one of the must-avoid episodes. It's not particularly good for any number of reasons. Andrew Skilleter's cover makes that version of Kronos look amazing. It's not quite as amazing looking on screen.
No. I have to say the budget for Time Monster must have been running low, and this was the 70s too. So the best they could do was paper mache. So, and I just remember it being, I love Roger Delgado. So, I mean, it was just hard not to watch the episode. It's not a favorite. It's not one I go back to rewatch. That's for sure. But I did enjoy the master being that. And of course I think in the book they correct Thaskalos.
Yes.
From Thascales, because I guess that's more accurate. So that was something I remember when I did read this book. But it was interesting that this book came out in 85 when the story was done much sooner. So there, if you notice, the listeners, I know, Tony, you know this too from your work in the Target books, we're jumping back and forth with these old stories like the Gunfighters to the Two Doctors to the Mythmakers to Time Monster. And it's just they're trying to get the catalog out and doing the best they can. So that is why they're doing that. We go now to October 10th, and I don't have this book to show, but it's The Twin Dilemma by Eric Sayward. With the second cover by Andrew Skilleter. The print run is way above 3,000, and the book was distributed in the U.S. despite the fact that it had not aired on TV yet. So it actually sold well based on the fact that, we haven't seen this yet, we should read it. Andrew Skilleter did a cover that featured the Sixth Doctor's face, but the rumor was, and I know I mentioned this because I was on the episode with you with this, that when Colin Baker's agent politely called W.H. Allen and said, I wanted to talk about the appearance fee for the doctor's face on the cover, and they panicked. I think they went, don't put him on the cover. So later, Colin Baker said, we would have paid whatever they asked. It wouldn't have, we would have accepted whatever they wanted. It's right. Like we weren't going to fight this. So Andrew did do a different cover, and I'll have those photos on my website. I apologize. I'll do a quick plug for my upcoming panels. My panel this year is a living history of Doctor Who books from 1964 to 1996, and I have 8 boxes in chronological order of all these amazing books. from that time period, and many of which never saw the United States. And my twin dilemma is packed away in there, so I couldn't quite dig it out. But while I'm on that subject, I'll just hold these up. I'll explain. Tony, have you ever seen these?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, this was a little bit of an amazing thing. I'm talking about these K9 books. These are children's books. K9 and the Beasts of Vega. K9
right.
And the Time Trap. And these were released in the United Kingdom. But what people don't know is a few years later, the U.S. sold them in hardcover.
Yes, I remember getting one of those in the local library and being all excited until I realized, oh darn, it's a children's book.
It's like a children's book.
And, it really is.
I only have one copy in hardcover, and it's pretty beat up, but it was kind of one of America's best kept secrets because it was distributed through children's book outlets. So it's still there was a guy on eBay selling a set of 4 of these for almost £400. So, but I have most of them, and that's part of that. So if you're coming to Doctoberfest, which I'm wearing the last year's T-shirt for that, which is down in Indianapolis. Actually, this year it'll be at Canby at the Who Shop, the Who North America Who Shop down there, and they're doing it outdoors. Our big guest this year is Keith Barnfather, the head of Real Time Pictures, and I've been talking with Keith because I'm going to have him on the podcast. But I showed him the fact that I still have the very first real-time pictures released in the United States, Wartime with John Levine and Michael Wisher. And it's a great story. And he got excited because they found a distribution company in America and they're out of business now. But he's like, oh, those are hard to find now. I'm like, well, I still have mine from when it came out. So just a little plug for that, but that's basically it. So going forward on this, there are proof copies of this Twin Dilemma book with the doctor's face on it that were given out, but none of them have been seen. And apparently it's a foil cover and really nice, but I've never even seen a picture. David Howe says he's been looking for one, but he couldn't find one. If you do have one of these and you're listening, please send me a photo. I'd love to just include it in the gallery. Not a very popular book today, worth about $35 in mint condition. In fact, for preparing for the Doctor Who Target Book Club, I bought a ex-library copy for $5 so I could read it. And Alien Entertainment has a boatload of these, and they're $35 each there. So I was on this episode. So Tony, what was our collective decision there?
Well, in episode 154, Dalton gave that Dalton gave it a 2.75. Allison gave it a 2. You gave it a 2.5. And I scandalized everybody by giving it a 3.75.
Right, I remember that.
Because I consider it probably to be one of the best Eric Sayward books. And part of the reason why it's the best Eric Sayward book is because it improves the Twin Dilemma. And I think, as I said on the podcast for that particular, the episode for that particular discussion, it is a very good book of a very bad episode.
Yeah, it is still considered one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever done. And I think you could easily forget it if you just don't watch the last episode of that season and just go on.
Right. In fact, in some polls, it's considered the worst because unless you include Dimensions in Time, in which case it becomes the second worst.
Because that was a disaster and a shit show. Excuse me, family podcast. A crap
Absolutely.
show. Sorry. But and I remember watching Dimensions in Time and I thought, this is horrible. This is really bad. And I'm so sorry to the classic Doctor actors that were in that. It was just, I hope you got paid well. That's all I gotta say. Oh man. But that was the Twin Dilemma. Sorry, I don't have a copy to show, but you'll see it at my panel. So I have it there. So we're going to go on to November 14th with Galaxy 4 by William Ems and a cover by, same guy, Andrew Skilleter. Price increase of £6.50. So not quite as high as Two Doctors, but from where we started at £5.95, we've gone up a little bit because the book costs are going up and revenue is down. So there we go. Andrew's art, of course, can be found online at andrewskilleter.com. And this book was sold in the United States, and it was a very popular book to sell because the episode did not exist. One episode does exist, and now it's been completely animated. So if you like the Chumleys, there you go. This book is from the original stock. It's worth about $50 in mint condition. There's not a lot of demand for it, and it's out there. So, Tony, what was the verdict on Galaxy 4?
That was episode 18. And in fact, for the longest time, that was the only hardcover that I ever owned. But I gave it away at a giveaway at one of our first Chicago TARDIS get-togethers.
Oh.
Come to think of it. Sorry.
No, it's
Somebody
okay.
outside decided to drag race. At just that moment.
Happens in Chicago all the time.
Yep, exactly. I believe that hardcover went to, oh my gosh, and I'm forgetting his name, but I know exactly who it went to. But Dalton gave it a 3, Allison gave it a 2, and I gave it a 3. Mainly because we were surprised at how decent the book is. Because William Ems is actually a decent writer, and it's almost a shame that he didn't get more episodes. Because the novelization of this is decent, and it gives us a first Doctor who is very different than the one we get on screen, and has a very different sense of humor than the one we get on screen. So it is worth reading the book just to get a sense of what the Hartnell era could have looked like if it had gone a slightly different route.
I agree. This is a book I enjoyed reading. Actually, it's a very well-written book. And to be honest, I remember when I was speaking with Peter Purvis, he said this was one of his favorite stories to film. So he got to be really active, especially when they were trying to suffocate him in the airlock. So it was just very, he enjoyed the story. Plus, he said the actresses he worked with were actually knockouts. So he thought he was surrounded by beauty in this episode. So it was just a really good episode for him. But that's the Galaxy 4. So this you could have bought this in the US back for $12, but not too bad. $50 is still not too bad today for that one. And we're going to finish off the year on December 12th. So this is one of the few years where we got 2 books in 1 month and a book every month. They didn't take any time off this year. They were really pushing. So much was happening for Doctor Who in 85. They thought, this is going to be our year. Oh no, we can't sell them. Well, let's dump them on the colonies. See how they do over there. Of course, the story goes they actually sent the books, but I don't remember ever receiving a bill. And I remember puzzled about that, but then again, I don't know. I was only the owner until 1988, so we hadn't seen one since then. But on December 12th, we get Time Lash by Glenn McCoy with a cover by David McAllister. Not Andrew Skilleter. So yeah, David McAllister did this one. You thought I was going to say Andrew Skilleter, didn't you, out there? Okay, well, anyway, more than 3,000 of these were done. I would say closer to 6,000 were done. And it was part of the U.S. dump in 1985. So I am the mail-in now. A very lackluster end to 1985, I will say. So this book is probably worth a little less than $50 in mint condition. And by the way, the current episode of the Doctor Who Target Book Club, as of this recording, had just been released with Time Lash. So I will go ahead and turn this over to Tony. And I know that this is going to not be a happy ending.
Yeah, I'm half tempted not to tell you our scores and to tell you to go listen to the episode. But yeah, nobody liked it. Dalton, who is usually very buoyant in his scores and is able to find the good in everything, only gave it a 2. Allison gave it a 1.5, and I gave it a 1.5. And there are multiple reasons why, not the least of which is we all hate this book, not necessarily because the book is bad, even though we hate it for that reason too, but also because the recording of the episode was cursed. We lost 2/3 of the original recording of the episode and had to remount and do it again 3 weeks later. So we had to revisit this book twice. And it's not a book that should even be visited once.
Right.
It's, but I think we decided that our poll quote for this one was Doctor Who Time Lash. At least it's not the Pescatons.
That's true. It could get worse.
Oh yes, but not by much.
Not by much. That could be. I don't remember this book selling very well, but it did sell out because Alien Entertainment doesn't have any of these anymore. But you can find these online. If you search Time Lash hardcover on eBay, you'll come up with a lot of them. So if you really need it, and this copy is from my original stock from 1985. But that wraps up the 1985. So basically, just to kind of recap here, the sales of hardcovers were so weak in the UK and Australia, and so many of them were printed that they had no choice but to dump them off on Lyle Stewart, who did their due diligence and contacted their libraries, bookstores, B. Dalton's back then, and other places that they could sell these. They even tried going to the comic book dealers who bought Doctor Who books, and none of them seemed to want to, the cost would have been, almost $7 a book. And I thought, well, we're going to have to sell them for $15 if we're going to make any money on it. And no one wanted to part with that kind of money, at least in the local shops. So it was interesting to us when we got them. And of course, if you have a copy of the Bundles from Britain catalog, and if you don't have one, we have a limited edition copy for sale on our eBay store. Just search Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, and we've got some authorized copies you can buy. We have the whole lot of them. And when we took them to TARDIS 23 or 22 and other conventions throughout 85, because we did quite a few, those were really moving. I mean, they moved off the shelf pretty fast. And it was just amazing to me. So they sold from between $12 and $15. Many are still available at Doctor Who Store, and I'll have the complete list of what's for sale at Alien Entertainment shortly. Sales will continue to weaken. And in looking to 1986, I think there's only one new title, and that's Time of the Rani, and you're not quite there yet. So, but that's the only one. All the other ones are old stories that are being either reprinted from paperback or that haven't been novelized yet. That's exactly it. So after 1985, Lyle Stewart will not sell any additional hardcover books until The Smugglers in 1988. And that's when the hardcover run ends. So if you want to own a set of 1985 books, it is not impossible. I do own a complete set, partially because 90% of those books I had already acquired from my stock in 1985. I did a cost estimate here. This, if you want a complete set of these books at the current going prices, for the whole set, you'd pay about $1,137, maybe a little less, maybe slightly more, depending on how much you pay for the Invasion or the Crusaders. That's also another one that's got a high price. So my advice, of course, is always to negotiate if you can. Make an offer if they allow you. Check out Abe's books online, Abe's Used, or Books A Million, and make sure that you're searching, because sometimes they have some good deals, but other times those prices may be higher. Every once in a while, Who North America had a stack of hardcover books, ex-libraries, that he was selling for $10 to $12 each, so you might get lucky. And, of course, Gene Smith online has a bunch of the originals at the current going rate. He doesn't overprice by the market. He tries to keep it where it is. There you go. So you might get lucky. Beware of price gouging. I would start watching the Facebook groups and use the respected sellers. And I would say go to people like Dale Santos, Jonathan Ruffle, Luke Ashby, David Russell, just to start with. And you can also get recommendations from people. New copies can be found at DoctorWhoStore.com. And as of this taping, Doctor Who Store has the following titles and prices. They have copies of The Crusaders for $375, The Twin Dilemma for $35, The Gunfighters for $45, The Mind of Evil $75, The Mythmakers $65, and The Awakening $45. And I just want to make a note that the prices set by DoctorWhoStore.com did not affect my research that was included in the average. So you can visit DoctorWhoStore.com and get them while you can. My special thanks to my good friend Tony Whitt, who joins me on this journey, which is only going to last 3 more virtual years. He's the host and producer of the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, available on SoundCloud and many providers, and is part of the Direction Point Network. What are the news of your upcoming shows?
We are going to be tackling a double episode very soon of Revelation of the Daleks, because there's a fan version of that's published by the New Zealand Doctor Who fan club, and the Eric Sayward book, which is not the last Eric Sayward book we're going to be doing, unfortunately, but it's next to last, which still makes it a good thing.
Is that a Paul Scoons novel?
No,
he didn't
John
do that one?
Prettle. John Prettle.
John Prettle. Yeah, okay. All right. I know who that is. Yeah.
Yeah, we finished the Paul Scoons books, but John Prettle,
he's all done.
This will be our first and only John Prettle book.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I remember, I think for a while, those reprints were still available at Lulu. I don't know. Sometimes they get struck out for copyright. But it's a really interesting. I have Revelation of the Daleks, I think, in hardcover on the shelf up there. Yeah, I do. And I have not read it because I remember what I know about Eric Sayward. But that sounds really interesting. Also, recently you tackled a Find Your Fate, Make Your Own Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
We did. And those are. Go ahead.
Mainly because we had to do the remount for the Time Lash episode. But we may be tackling more of those if there's interest in doing them, because they are all exclusively Colin Baker. And since we're in his era, and since his era is so pitifully small, we're trying to do as much as we can that features him.
Yeah, and I think you're also going to have fun with the non-aired episodes that came in.
We're doing the 3 missing adventures before we had another set of missing adventures called by a different name, by the same name, and we're going to be doing Slipback.
Oh, good. Yeah, Slipback. That's also, by the way, Slipback also gets a hardcover novelization. We'll include that on our program as well.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Oh, I know. Anyway, future episodes will come out later this year. The next episode that Tony and I do together will be the 1986 hardcovers after the Target Book Club reaches Time in the Rani. And by the way, none of the hardcovers in 1986 were included in any U.S. distribution because they stopped coming over here. So we had no idea. We thought they were done in 85 back then. So be sure to follow us on Instagram at Doctor Who Collectors to see the full cover art of each one of these covers, which are posted there in order, publication order. You can watch this episode on Patreon if you so choose with a $15 subscription. We thank all of those who have decided to put money our way. And if you have any photos or proof of life of books I did not mention, but you have proof of, please send those to me at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com with photos of the cover, the back cover, the spine, and the copyright page, as that will give us proof of life. So thank you once again for being here, Tony.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Always welcome to have you here. And my listeners, please stay tuned for the most outrageous offer.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Allison Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast on the Direction Point Podcast Network. Keep collecting.
All my travellings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil, against power-mad conspirators. I should have stayed here. The oldest civilization. Decadent, degenerate, and rotten to the core. Power-mad conspirators, Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
And now it's time for the most outrageous offer. The most outrageous offer, of course, is a Doctor Who item or Doctor Who related item that is priced crazily, really outside the norm and absolutely ridiculous, and you should never pay this price. So I've gotten quite a few. This one takes the cake for me, because this is obviously either one book being floated around for 4 different prices, or somebody found a stock of brand new copies and is trying to gouge the market but didn't know the rules for doing so. So we're talking about one of the most difficult books to find, which is Lungbarrow, one of the new Doctor Who adventures by Mark Platt, published in 1997. Yeah, this book is hard to find, and it's not cheap, but it's not this crazy. So we have Big Bill's Books in Wimberley, Texas, if that's a real store. They're saying it's a new book, brand new copy, $3 shipping, $3,320.67. But wait, there's more. These are all on Abe's Books, by the way. There's also a copy, brand new, from Wizard Books, if that's a real bookseller, for $3,320.57. So if you want to save a dime, go to that one. For the exact same price here, you can go to Golden Dragon, which I don't know if that's a real place either. Lungbarrow, brand new copy, $3,320.57. Crazy. So if you want to save a few cents more, go to Front Cover Books, if that's a real place. Lungbarrow, brand new copy, $3,320.53. And then, wait, there's more. Golden Waves of Books, Fayetteville, Texas, if that is a real place. $3,317.36. And there's more. Last one. Brand new copy. Published by Gold Books of Denver, Colorado, $3,316.25. Okay, that's almost like $20,000 there, and I think it's the same book. It's always people that use stock images, so it's not the real book. We don't know if any of these people actually have the book. But this is absolutely crazy. So independently, we found Lungbarrow on eBay, anywhere from $269.99 to $569.99, and in between there. That's pretty much where it's going. You might get lucky and get it down to $200, or if you were like me and you bought it when it came out, it was like $12. So, I mean, that's how that goes. But it is a very difficult book to find. It is a book that does not have the Doctor Who logo on it because Virgin lost the license. It is, I believe, it's the one prior to the last one, The Dying Days. Also another one, a very difficult one to find. But it is, and I remember my good friend Eric Goldbranson of the Police Box in a Junkyard podcast asked if there were any reasonable copies of Lungbarrow out there, and I said, I'm sorry, no. You're going to pay for it. It's just a very, very hard to find book. But it's not so hard to find that if there's some new copies floating around, or pre-owned copies. Some of these books look exactly like the stock images, but don't pay $3,000. Now, I will have these links, or at least a link to the search engine on there. Some of these books might be gone by the time you see them, but I did take screenshots. So I always take a screenshot because I try to look up other copies, and there are no copies below $3,316.25. That's crazy. Don't buy it for that. Come on, just keep a look around, look at other places, look at other book places, check out eBay, Facebook groups. You might be able to get a copy for a little less. So don't let that eat your money away. That's just absolutely crazy stuff. So there you go. And if you find an item out there that just looks a little too much for what you think it might be, send it to me. We'll do a thorough investigation. Now, keep in mind, some copies of books, like, for instance, Lungbarrow, might be sitting at $275. That's okay. That I completely think that's reasonable. But $3,300 I do not think is reasonable.
I'm sorry. Also, if you find a copy of Big Finish spare parts on vinyl for $2,000, I'm going to disqualify that too, because I haven't seen any out there. Very hard to find. Extremely difficult to find one. And I got lucky because I bought one of the last ones that they had in stock at Big Finish. And so I've got one. It's still sealed in its container. So just keep an eye out for those. It's just, that's what you do. As collectors, we hunt, we negotiate. I have a rule about certain things. Like when I buy books in bulk, I pay a certain price. And if they don't want to do it, then that's fine. They can keep it. And some of those book sales stay there for years. And I come back years later and go, hey, you tired of holding on to them? And they're like, nope, I think I can get this. Okay, you do that. And that's how it works. Anyway, that is the most outrageous offer for this episode, and that wraps up the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. I want to thank my guest today, Mr. Tony Whitt, who helps me out quite a bit with the Target book novels, and of course, you can also listen to him on the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast. So, coming up on the program, I believe on my next episode, I'm going to do a deep dive into a magazine called Doctor Who Print Level, and it has supposed to have all this information about collecting hardcovers. We will find out together. We're also going to have Neil Cole on the program very soon, and we are well into convention season starting next month with Doctoberfest. So, thank you for listening, and keep collecting.
A Doctor Who Podcast Network.